Bigfoot Radio, episode 12, part 2, with our very special guest, Lynn Poole, who was telling us last time about the Genosqua attack encounter he experienced when he was a teenager. And tonight's show, we're going to talk about the other Bigfoot-related things that he's experienced since then. And for my money, I was really glad to hear that he got away from that Genosqua and nobody got injured or eaten. But this next encounter he's going to talk about really would scare the hell out of me, even worse than that. And I know what it's like to see one of those Genosqua type critters. I saw the northern version, so I know exactly how scary that is. But this would scare me even worse. So with that, welcome back to the show again, Lynn.
Thanks, Duke. Yeah, we'll hope everybody enjoys this segment of the show as much as the other. They are apparently enjoying. They weren't the most fun times, but it's definitely wild and crazy.
Yeah. The best thing about encounters like that is that, oh, you survived. Yay!
Yep.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of other good things to be said about them. Now, the one we're talking, or more than one that we're talking about tonight, the first one of the two happened in a different state. This was in Indiana where it happened, right?
Yes. My parents moved us up here to Indianapolis when I was 10 because my dad went to work for Allison's up here as a tool and die maker. And I had a bunch of friends where we lived, and they introduced me to this area where I did quite a bit of my hunting and some fishing. As I said before, I collected guns, and a lot of people considered me a gun nut, but I became a town marshal for a short while here in Indiana. So basically, from the time I was 18 up until I got completely disabled, where I couldn't work anymore, I was always armed anywhere I was gone.
Mm-hmm.
But my friends introduced me to this area. It's about 40 miles south of Indy, and it's on White River, and that's where I did a lot of my hunting and stuff. A lot of, as I got a little bit older, a lot of me going hunting was more just my time out in the woods, being, communing with nature more or less. If I went hunting and I came back with nothing, 9 times out of 10, I was out there just to have fun.
Yeah.
Usually if I went hunting and I was actually out to put meat in the refrigerator, I came home with something. But this was in a small town. The river was actually just a little outside of town, but we'd been going there since I was like 14 years old. And I had a friend that went with me a lot. We'll call him Tim. Not his real name, because after this happened, he didn't want to talk about it at all, period, to anybody. The only person I ever told about this first encounter was my mother, and she didn't believe me, and I got Tim and brought him over, and I actually had to twist his arm to get him to tell my mom, yeah, that happened.
Wow.
And then she just sit there with her mouth hanging open, looking back and forth between the two of us. But after that, he never spoke of it again to anybody. So I know he wouldn't want me to tell what his real name would be.
Right.
But we'd been going to this place, hunting and fishing and all, for a long time. We got to know the people in the town well enough. After they got used to us, they started, we pretty much had free reign to go on anybody's farms that was out there to go hunting, because they knew that the gates would be closed, and we didn't shoot things that we weren't supposed to be shooting. we had runs. One of the farms was right down next to the river where we went, and that gentleman raised pigs. And there was a farm on the other side where they raised chickens. So coyotes were starting to get bad down there, and they actually offered us a bounty for shooting the coyotes, which we never took. Those people were good to us, so we wouldn't go take no money from them.
Right.
But we'd made a habit of always stopping at the little store there in town on the way in, and if we stayed really late, we might hit it on the way back out too. And that's how we got to know everybody. And pretty much we could roam anybody's farm in that area without even having to stop and talk to anybody. They seen my car there, they knew who it was. But anyway, getting to this point, I had, like I said, collected guns and stuff. We went squirrel hunting that day, and we're going to go fishing that night. And we'd been out squirrel hunting all day. And for some reason, there wasn't a whole lot of squirrels in this woods, which always seemed kind of strange to me because it was just loaded with oak trees and walnut trees. And, there was even a back in there, I guess it probably been from, old farms that had been back in that area long time ago, a few apple and pear trees scattered back in the woods. And where we parked was actually a fish and wildlife area. And they had a boat ramp there, but it's all gravel.
Mm-hmm.
And right there around that was, always fish pretty heavy. So if you caught something there, it was usually pretty small right in that area. So I borrowed a flat bottom boat from a friend of mine, and we decided we were going to go downstream. It's about a mile and a quarter, mile and a half downstream. There was a great big gravel bar. And figured we go down there and fish because at that time there was hardly anybody that I'd ever seen put a boat in there.
Right.
So after we hunted all day, we got loaded up and went down to that gravel bar, and there was this one big bunch of, I don't know what they call them, but they're a little bit similar to bamboo because they grow really, really fast and tall.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my catfish poles that we were lugging over there is 9 feet long, and I set it down there and put those right at 9 feet tall. And I used one of those. I cut it off, and because the way the stems for the leaves come off of it was pretty sturdy, so I was able to cut that up in pieces, and we used that for propping our fishing poles in. And so since it's night, I switched over. I was carrying a full choke 12 gauge shotgun, and my friend had a combination 22 410 that a friend of mine that was a gunsmith had custom made for me. It was a single shot 410 and a 22 semi-automatic.
Nice.
And that's what he had. And so since, we're not shooting squirrels or anything anymore, and we waited till about dark. I kept bird shot in it till then because we thought maybe we might be able to bag a duck or something around there for us to roast over the campfire instead of just eating the snacks we'd brought with us. Had one pair of ducks fly by, but they were way too far away, so didn't get to them. So I switched over and loaded it up with number 4 buck because we knew that coyotes came down on this sand gravel bar to drink a lot of times. So we thought we might get some coyotes. And so we got set up. We had our poles out and got dark.
Just to backtrack for a second, I'm sorry to cut in there. For the benefit of the people that aren't really that knowledgeable about guns, what's the number for shot?
Uh, number 4 buckshot would probably be about 28 caliber roughly, and 14 of those balls will go inside a shotgun shell.
So yeah, with every shot that you take, you're actually hitting them with 14 28 caliber rounds.
Yep.
So you can be pretty sure that's going to take a coyote off its feet.
Oh yeah, big time, and at a farther distance too. That particular shotgun was a Savage, what they call a poly choke, and that's just uh, basically the end of the barrel is split so it can open and close, and it's got a like a selector dial on the thing, and you can go from all the way from modified, which is the largest pattern it'll make, to full choke, which is the smallest pattern it'll make. And that particular shotgun, I already knew at a distance of 30 feet would put all 14 of those balls in the size of a 9-inch dinner plate.
Ooh,
So it was, a very, very tight pattern.
yeah. Yeah, that makes for a very impressive mangling of whatever area it is you managed to hit with it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it definitely tears up whatever it hits.
Yep. So anyway, you got this, gun with you, and it's, it turns out a good thing that you had it with you. Your buddy's got another one of your guns that he borrowed from you, and you guys have been out hunting during the day. Now, it sounds like you've got loads just in case you run into coyotes or something,
Yeah,
something
pretty
like along
much.
those lines. So, how much did you have enough ammo to feel like, you could go for a while, or?
uh, yeah, I custom made uh, the hunting vest that I was wearing at the time, and it held 25 slugs, 25 number 4 bucks. I had 25 loads of squirrel shot and 25 loads of bird shot for my 12 gauge in it. Plus, it held 200 rounds of 22. So, you know,
Well, did you have that thing fully loaded with all that different kinds of cartridges and loads in there? Or?
yeah,
Oh my God, that's like having a flak vest on, man. That thing must have been heavy to tote around.
it really didn't bother me that much, but it was a little bit heavy. Before I got disabled, I was the guy that could walk in your house, take and throw a strap around your refrigerator and pick it up and walk off with it.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. I know that feeling. I used to be strong too before my back gave out on me.
yeah, uh,
Well,
I
anyway, I was just gonna
back
say, it's not only were you set for coyotes, you were set for anything else potentially. If you got 12 gauge slugs, that's good to go for anything in North America practically.
Yeah, pretty much. Basically, when I made that, I just had it in mind where whatever I'm hunting for, I've got a full boxes of ammo for whatever I'm hunting. So
Wow.
uh, it's just one of those things that was just me. A lot of people considered it definitely overkill, and in most situations it was. But it's kind of one of those things. It's better to have it and not need it than need it and don't have it.
Right. And this may be a classic illustration and example of that. So
Oh yeah.
continue, continue on. So you guys are out there. You got your little uh, fishing pole holders set up, and you got coyote loads in there. Some number 4 buckshot just in case. And what's going on at this point?
Yeah. When it gets dark, and we're still on daylight savings time at this point, so it doesn't actually get dark to where we have to light the lanterns till like 10:30 at night.
Hmm.
And so then we fired up the lantern, and mosquitoes are starting to come out. So we'd already gathered up, driftwood and everything around there, and light a fire that the smoke keeps the mosquitoes and stuff away. And we're sitting there fishing and talking and basically just having a time, enjoying our time out in the woods. And every once in a while, I kept hearing something walking across the gravel back behind us. And I kept looking around, and I didn't see anything. Eh. And that went on for quite a while, and I just kept putting it off. It's probably deer, back there coming up to get drink out of the edge of the river there,
Hmm.
and really didn't think nothing about it. But I wasn't completely comfortable either. Just I guess the best way to put it was I was kind of wary because I felt like this something ain't quite sitting right, but I don't know what.
Was this like the feeling you had when you were over there at Portland Lake with your friends and you just didn't feel like you should be there?
No, this wasn't anywhere near as strong as that. It was just I was a little bit uneasy, and I didn't know why.
Okay.
And when we first started going up there, before the people got to know us very much, when we was going up there fishing and hunting and stuff, there was this little store. There was chairs in there. The older gentleman and come sit up in the store and talk and bullshit like they do in most little small towns.
Hmm.
And always told us, y'all be careful up there. Y'all be careful. But he never really said anything about, why should we be careful? The only thing I'd ever seen, you know, in the woods that worried me was snakes. And everything else was, pretty much been there, done that, seen it.
Yeah.
I tracked, I knew there was raccoons, deer, uh, tons of chipmunks, and seen a couple of sets of bobcat tracks. But basically, as far as predators or anything, the biggest I've seen anywhere in the area is coyotes.
Hmm.
So, I wasn't worried about them.
Now, what year? This was like what, in the mid 80s? When did this happen?
Uh, I think it's around 1988. It was either 88 or 89,
Okay.
right around there. May have been 87, but somewhere right in that area. But we're sitting there fishing. We've had a few bites and caught a couple of smaller catfish that we tossed back. And like I said, I just kept hearing every once in a while something walking across gravel, and I kept looking back there and didn't see nothing. Uh, we'd been there for quite a while fishing, and so I'm guesstimating it may have been about 2 o'clock or so, maybe. And I heard something again, and I looked back around, and I didn't see anything. And for some reason, I looked up because where we were at, the sand and gravel bar was actually probably 8 feet lower than the ground that was the side of the fields and stuff from the farms up there. And the gentleman had the pig farm had he actually had two of those street lamps at his place. One was up by the house and the other one was back by the bar. And I looked up where I was kind of facing toward that light, and I see these two green things shining over top of those 9 foot tall weeds.
Uh-oh.
And
Did it remind you of when you saw those red glowing things when you were younger?
not right away, at least, but it's like I sat there with my mouth hanging open for a second, said, "What the hell is that?" And then I stood up and spun around my chair where I was standing on the other side of my chair from what I determined to be eyes. And I'm standing there with my mouth hanging open. And I hear Tim, he says, "What?" And I said, "Look over here." And then he come up with, "What the?" out of him. And he's sitting there in his chair for a second. And then he stands up. When he turns around, he knocks his chair over. And when it clattered and all, whatever was behind there decided, okay, it just made a decision. It's coming our way.
Uh-oh.
At a distance of, it was probably 50 feet roughly behind us when it was behind those weeds, and it growled right before it turned to do that. And when it made the turn, I reached down, I grabbed my 12 gauge and pulled it up. When it came around the side of those weeds and made the first step toward us, I opened up with 6 rounds of buckshot. I started at the groin and worked my way all the way up to the head. The first shot, it screamed at the first shot, and when I got done, it was laying on the ground. And my friend Tom, I helped teach combat firearms and stuff, and Tom had worked with me some. He'd been in the Army, I think it was. His brother had been in the Army or the Marines, and then he went in the other. So one of them was Army, one Marine. I think Tim was Marine or Army. But when I dropped down on one knee and started shoving rounds back in the shotgun, he shot it with that little 410 and then started slowly putting 22s in it, which probably did a lot of good. It was more harassment fire than anything.
Yeah, it's like little bee stings landing on them after you got done actually packing a bunch of wallops on them.
Yep. And so I'm shoving a mix of buckshot and slugs back into my shotgun. And I got reloaded, and I just put my shotgun back to the shoulder, and Tom kneeled down beside me and started pulling 22s out of my vest and sticking in there. And I looked over at him, and I mean, it wasn't but just for a second. I just looked down at him and looked back up. It was gone.
Whoa.
It had been laying flat out on the ground, and in that time, I looked away and looked back. It had got up and gone.
How much detail on this thing could you see as it was coming toward you?
That was one of the strange things that's always bugged me about it. Was except for the glowing green eye shine, couldn't see any detail. It was like the light coming off that Coleman lantern. You know how bright those are.
Yeah.
It's like it just absorbed that light.
And he got up to what, about 30 feet from you guys?
When I opened up on him, he was probably about 45 feet away.
Okay.
So at that distance, I know every set of shot of buckshot that went that way hit him.
Right. But yeah, even with like a fairly weak lantern, you should still be able to see him at 45 feet.
Yeah, it was like it just absorbed the light. You couldn't see anything except the outline, and it's like what I saw of the outline above the weeds when I first seen it was it looked like a mantle clock that you would set up on a fireplace mantle, basically like a head and shoulders silhouette that was lit up from behind because of that big street light that was over at the farm. But yeah, I blast this thing, it falls down, and then I stayed there on my knee, with my shotgun up while Tom reloaded. And once he got reloaded, he grabbed the lantern, and then we walked up there. And where in the hell did this thing go? We know it went down because I blasted the hell out of it. And we walk up there, and there is this major blood pool there that's full of foamy blood. So I know for sure it died because it had definite lung shots to it. So I know that one died. But it had got up, and there was a blood trail leading off over toward the trees and the woods that went up there. We weren't going to follow it. If it took that much punishment and got up and walked off, we weren't about to follow it.
Yeah, no kidding. Is there any chance there could have been another one there that could have snatched him up and got made off with him?
It's possible, I guess. If it did, I never saw it, or it never made its presence known. But I just know that in probably a second, it disappeared. From
Wow.
me looking down at Tom taking 22s out of my vest to looking back up, it was gone.
That's even almost creepier than having it charge you.
Yep. So, I stood guard while Tom broke our little fishing area up and got it loaded back into the boat for because we're going to leave
Yeah.
as fast as possible. We jump, he gets everything in the boat, and I get in the boat, and he's got the shotgun, and I start rowing us back up river. Well, right after that gravel bar was right where the river made a big S turn. And so we had the boat there at the top of the first S turn, and I started rowing us away and got up to the point where the river shallowed up right there as it started that S, and the water speeded up. And turned out that I could row fast enough to hold us in place there, but I couldn't get ahead.
Uh-oh. Yeah, if
And
it's that shallow, they could probably just come running right out there.
so Tom was a little skinny guy that could move pretty good. So what we came up with was there was a path that was about 2 feet wide that was right there along the edge of the river that went up toward where we were parked. So since we wasn't going to make headway that way, we went over to the bank. Tom got out, and we tied a rope onto the handle there at the front of the boat, and I put one of the paddles under my leg to act as kind of a rudder. And I'm sitting in the boat with the shotgun and the lantern sitting there, and Tom's pulling us upriver along that bank.
Good God, man. That's just incredibly scary to think about having to jump back off the boat onto the shore, essentially, and drag the boat upriver. I mean, you must have been covering them. Had you guys seen anything in between where the actual shooting had happened and where you were at this point when he had to get off the boat and drag the boat?
No, we hadn't seen anything yet, but I'm sitting there with a shotgun that's loaded with a mix of slugs and buckshot that held 6 rounds at a time. And so he starts pulling us upriver, and I'm keeping a watch out. And he stayed kind of bent over, but we're talking about that thing that we'd seen that we shot was in the neighborhood of about 10 feet tall.
God.
So if I, was going to need to do any shooting, it was going to be well over his head. But he starts pulling the boat upriver with me in it, and I'm sitting here with the 12 gauge practically on my shoulder and the light. It probably took 20 minutes or so, roughly, for him to pull us back up to where we parked. In that space of time, every time I saw a pair of green things pop up anywhere, I would yell at him incoming, and then whatever it was got 3 rounds directed at its head. I went through 18 rounds on the way back to the car.
Wow.
And I know I got hits because we got screams of pain every time I fired.
So you had to send 6 bursts down range at these things. So you would think unless they were completely impervious to the weaponry that you had, or were just like really into getting hurt, that you must have had a few of them trying to
Yep.
grab you guys.
Yep. I had to shoot 6 more times on the way back to the car. Whether they were, the same, maybe just the same couple animals that kept trying or not, I don't know. I just know that along that path on the way back to the car, which was, he pulled us probably a mile to a mile and a quarter along that bank. Anytime I saw 2 green glowing things, they got shot at.
Mm-hmm.
And once we got back to the car, I stood guard while Tom loaded everything into the car. And once he was in, I handed him the shotgun and I jumped in, fired it up, and we take off out of there. Now, at this point, once we're away, that's when I start getting the really bad shakes and stuff because now it's over. And so we pulled up and I parked in front of the little store. And if I remember right, they opened at like 6 in the morning. And we sat there in front of the store smoking cigarettes and shaking. And the lady that owned the little store, she come to open the store and seen us sitting in the car, and she looked at us and she says, I put the coffee pot on, you boys get in the house or get in the store, which we did. And oh, we hadn't been there but just a few minutes to one of the older gentlemen that sits in there and talks all day come in. And he took one look at us and he looked at the lady. He says, you need to get that out from behind the counter. And she come across the counter with a bottle of wild turkey 100 proof.
Yeah, I bet you could use a shot right about then.
And yeah, our coffee cups got slugs of wild turkey put in them. And once we had that, he says, you guys must have ran into it or something to that effect. I don't remember exactly, but basically he said something like, you guys seen it, didn't you? And so then we told him what was going on. And I said, well, you could have told us, we'd have been even more careful than what we was because we didn't think there was anything there to be scared of.
Oh my God. Yeah, unfortunately, I hear those sort of things way too often.
It come to find out, that little town when we was going down there, basically at dark they roll up the sidewalks and everything. And we never really kind of knew why. I just thought it's a little small town thing.
Yeah.
After dark, the only, the little town had 2 cops, and the cop was all you did see him moving after dark unless somebody absolutely had to.
Right.
So,
and you wouldn't really expect it for a lot of these little small towns. It's like there's no real nightlife, A lot of them don't have a movie theater or anything. So
no,
what is there to do?
This little town, I think it had was a little bit over 300 population.
Yeah.
Really small. But then they started telling us about stuff that was going on there. And this had been going on for ages and ages. And basically, pretty much from what I gathered, it had scared people, going through trash cans or peeking in people's houses. And, it hadn't really hurt anybody, but they'd scared the dickens out of a lot of people. And, it's like the gentleman that on the pig farm, they got on the phone and they brought a whole bunch of people up there and started telling us what's going on. And he told us about seeing the one that was taking hogs. And he said their dogs had been going crazy one night and got them woke up and the pigs was going nuts. And this gentleman was a Korean War veteran, and said he grabbed his hunting rifle and went out there and was going to shoot what he thought, was thinking more along the lines of coyotes, I think, than anything else. But he sees this thing step over his fence, grab 2 hogs that were about 300 pounds apiece, one under each arm, step back over the fence and walk off with them. And we're like, why didn't you shoot it? He said it had turned to the light just enough that the light had kind of lit its face. And he said it looked too human. He couldn't do it.
So it sounds like what you're dealing with in this area are probably some type 1s then.
Yeah. I'm just, I've been boggled of why I couldn't see any features other than the eyes and the outline on the bright lights.
Yeah.
Him seeing it, them blue street lights and all, maybe it was just the kind of light that glinted off or something where he was able to see a face.
Mhm.
But we started hearing from, the chicken farmer told us, they take a couple of chickens once a year. They took like 2 pigs for the pig farmer once a year. And it's kind of like they pretty much kind of live and let live. They didn't hurt anybody. They scared some people, but they didn't hurt anybody.
Doesn't it
And
almost sound like a mobster shakedown, though? Like, give
yeah,
us tribute, and we won't, wreck your car and eat your kids or something. It's like, it's really kind of strange. I can understand well, we're not going to take so many that it causes you any inconvenience, really. We'll just take 2 pigs and we'll take a handful of chickens or something like that. But still, it's like, why do you think you should be getting any?
yeah. And as just, they weren't economically hurting the few farmers they took a little bit off of. They never took too much, and it was always just a little, and
Yeah.
usually at just certain time of the years.
Mm.
But
It's kind of weird. I mean, it almost makes you wonder if this had been like going on in that local area so long that both sides just sort of got accustomed to this arrangement and sort of took it for granted.
yeah, I would say so. Like I said, I hunted and fished there since I was 14, and I had never seen anything, no tracks, no nothing to make me believe there was anything bigger than a coyote around there as a predator. Now they did have problems in that area with poachers on deer, and I only hunted deer in that area with a bow because in shotgun season, them people got nuts. And it's like they most of the time wondered why they weren't really getting any big deer. I was actually chasing one particular buck that ended up getting shot by somebody else. He walked out in somebody else's yard in shotgun season.
Oh, damn.
But these people would go out and they started using the trees there by the, up by the parking area to sight their shotguns in, a day or two before shotgun season.
Oh,
Well, as
geez.
soon as they started blasting all the older deer that knew better, they disappeared. And it took me a long time to find out where they were going. They were taking off and going several miles away and going inside an area that was owned by a power company where there's no hunting. And they didn't come back till spring.
Right, they're not dumb.
But I'd been in that woods. I had there was a big old maple tree that didn't have any branches on it for a ways up. That when the river flooded, it actually flooded a lot of those woods. And during one of the floods, it had loosened up all the dirt around the maple, and it fell over into the a crotch of an oak. And this maple tree was like 2.5 feet in diameter, so I was able to just walk up it, and I could sit right in the crotch of that oak on that maple tree, and I had a big knot hole on the branch from the oak that I could use for an ashtray to put out my cigarettes in, so no fires got started. And, I'd be sitting like 30 feet up off the ground. Now I'd been up in that, and there'd been a couple of times where everything just all at once got quiet, and I got really uneasy a couple of times like that. And I think there's a couple of times I was just wandering around, squirrel hunting, that all at once the woods got quiet and made me real uneasy. But other than that, I had never seen anything or heard anything that would make me think there was anything in those woods.
Mhm.
There was a couple of times I heard some unusual coyote howls off in the distance, but nothing that would have ever made me think there was anything bigger than a coyote as a predator there.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't even sound like you guys were likely to have had any or much of anything in the way of cougars around there at that point either.
No, I'd seen a couple of times some bobcat tracks, but bobcat's even smaller than a coyote.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I wouldn't be scared of a bobcat. I wouldn't even need a gun to not be scared of a bobcat.
no, but yeah, we started hearing the tales from the people that lived there then about what was going on. So
Did they tell you there was like any specific areas you should avoid or anything, or did they just like after the fact go, "Oh, you went to that one specific area you should avoid that we failed to tell you about"?
no, they didn't tell us about that. There was actually a creek that actually ran through the town, and there was a bridge over it. As if I remember, right, it's called White Lick Creek. And most of the time, it's running, depths of maybe 6 inches.
Mm-hmm.
But now, if you had really big rainstorms, it would basically be a Russian river.
Right.
But as a general rule, it's just a creek. And so I kind of think they were following the creek up to the town and raiding, trash cans and stuff.
Wouldn't surprise me. People, a lot of people would be surprised by the how seemingly regular that is. I get reports of that sort of thing all the time. They're like, "Oh, but we're like right on the edge of a good-sized town." Well, yeah, you're kind of right on the edge of it, and right next to a wilderness area. And yeah, they sneak up and raid trash cans and gardens and all that kind of stuff. So, it's not like so weird. Just because you got street lights and neighbors doesn't mean they can't show up.
Yep, pretty much. But yeah, like I said, we kind of garnered from all the stories that we were hearing. It was basically, you know, everybody stayed in because they'd scared them quite a bit of being out at night. And because, like I said, if you seen anybody moving at night, it was just a cop car.
Right. They had never had any missing persons or anybody reported like having been injured by one of these things or anything.
Not that, not that they told us about. They never said anything about anybody, you know, getting hurt or anybody missing.
Hmm.
Uh, Now I know from research that I've did since I've been disabled in my, as I call it, cyber squatching. I never actually went out in the woods looking for them, even though I believe Bigfoot was out there. I never thought about it being in Indiana, but yeah, we heard all the tales. But now around Indiana, there are hunters that have disappeared, uh, or people come up missing. They find their car on the side of a road somewhere with a flat tire, and the person's gone, and nobody knows what happened to them.
Hmm.
And also from my research, I've kind of deduced that 65 to 70% of the encounters in Indiana are of aggressive nature.
That's
Uh,
not reassuring. So you got some
yeah,
really crabby sassies over there. If it's even just like type ones and they're that bad, maybe they're very territorial because they just don't have a whole lot of woods over there to be territorial about.
I'm not sure. Pamela Velasco, who is one of the Bigfoot outlaws, now she had encounters down in southern Indiana that weren't belligerent. They scared her, but nobody, none of them were actually trying to hurt her or anything.
Hmm.
Is with her it was almost like they were kind of protecting her type deal because she had a young child and a lot of time was alone, and so was kind of like they were looking out for her a bit. But then there's a whole lot of other stories, come out where hunters have ran into them and literally had to shoot the things to get them to go away and leave them alone. They were in the process of being attacked and they're shooting them.
Huh.
And those I'm pretty much kind of attributing to basically juveniles because most of the time the guys that was in the were talking about something that was 5 or 6 feet tall,
Uh-huh.
something along human proportions, but it sees them as aggressive and is coming at them. And most of the time this was in deer season. They're getting shot with deer slugs, and once they get shot, they run off.
Uh,
Uh,
and one would imagine if it was a 5-foot creature and it's getting hit with a deer slug, it might be just running off to die. Unless it was a haphazardly placed shot, that's going to do a hell of a lot of damage.
yep. But yeah, that's what I'm seeing about around Indiana, is from what I'm seeing. Up north, from what I've seen in the northern part of Indiana, up toward Michigan and all, they tend to, I haven't really seen very many encounters there that weren't aggressive in one way or another. Not try, they really haven't hurt anybody, but it's more like they're being aggressive and scaring the people out of the area.
Yeah. And
Down south,
it could be just that they're really good at bluffing.
Yeah.
But that's like dangerous, and they shouldn't be doing that with humans. And obviously, they're smart enough to know that we have these thunder sticks that can kill things at long range, whether they've been shot by one or not. So you still got to question what's behind that kind of behavior.
Yep. In the southern part of Indiana, it seems to be kind of a mix of non-aggressive and aggressive. And there's almost kind of, from what I remember, kind of a line of, if it's on this side of the line, they're kind of passive, and on this side of the line, they're kind of aggressive. Type of thing.
Interesting. Yeah, I got another friend over there in Indiana who's goes out and does some squatching out in the field every so often, and he's definitely finding plenty of signs that they're around there.
Yeah, that's something else, and all the time I've been hunting, fishing, and everything, I've never seen an X formation or TP structures or any of those things, which, way they are in some other areas. They say, that maybe areas where they're not really, a whole lot of a troop on top of troop in an area, that maybe they don't do it. But
yeah, if there's no neighboring troops, they may not even mark their borders for all I know. Because why? There's no other Bigfoot around here to keep out.
Yeah, I've never seen any of those markings, and like I said, I've never seen tracks or anything else that would have led me to believe, something was in the area. Plus, I never thought about them being in the area.
Yeah.
So anyway, all that happened. We get told by all the townspeople what's going on. Like I said, a little while after this happened, I told my mom, and she's like, "You're just telling tall tales." And I'm like, "No, I'm not." And she wouldn't believe me, so I got Tim was over one day, and I practically twisted his arm, and he goes, "Yeah, Miss Poole, that happened." And then she sat there with her mouth hanging open, looking back and forth to me and him like we were, aliens or something. But
has the whole world gone mad? They both think they were shooting at Bigfoot.
Yeah, and she never said anything about it again either. But fast forward roughly a year or so ago, and I'd pretty much forgotten about it. And one night I was wanting to go fishing. I was off work. I wanted to go fishing. Couldn't get nobody else to go. So I'm like, okay, I'm going by myself. And I took off, and I went down to one place where we fished a lot that was along one of the major roads, and had a shoulder and everything where you could pull off on along that road. There were several places you could pull off and go down and fish the river. And it was like there was basically just wall-to-wall people down there. And for some reason, a lot of people that fished in that area was just rude. And if you got down in there fishing, they'd throw lines over yours and everything else. And I'm like, I'm not even messing with that deal.
Yeah.
So I took off and went back to the boat ramp. Like I said, I pretty much kind of forgot about everything.
And the boat ramp. Oh, now, this was how long after you had the original with your buddy Tim out there gunfight with these things? How long had it been?
a year or a little bit more.
Okay.
You know, it'd been long enough. It's kind of out of conscious thinking about it.
Right. Well, and the other
And
thing was you weren't going to go out on a boat downriver a couple miles. You were just going to stay right at the landing.
yeah, I never, to be honest, I never even thought about that at all. I'm just like, I know I'll be able to fish there without a whole bunch of yo-yos bugging me. And really, that's the only thing that went through my mind. That's a place I can go fish. I'm not going to have a bunch of rude people around me, you know, type deal. Never even, the other thing never entered my mind. Didn't even think about it. So I'm sitting there fishing. I got my lantern sitting on the hood of my car and got my stereo on playing music low. I got my fishing poles out and I'm just sitting there enjoying the night and fishing. And I don't remember exactly how long I'd been there, but it was pretty late or very early in the morning, whichever you want to look at it.
So once again, probably somewhere in that 2 to 4 range.
Yeah, I I'd say it's probably around 3,
There you go.
something in
Okay.
there. And I'd been hearing splashes in the water a little bit downstream from where I was at. And the last time the river had come up, it had washed out the bank enough that one of the trees that was along the river had fallen over and was in the water up against the bank. So I'm looking at a root ball from a very mature tree that's like 8 feet in diameter.
Right.
So before that was there, before that had fallen over, we'd see raccoons and stuff come down to get water while we're fishing there all the time because you could see straight down the bank.
Hmm.
So I'm just thinking it's the raccoons because that place was, you know, lousy with raccoons, and they started coming out like, they'd start coming out at like 5 or 6 in the afternoon a lot of times. And I never thought about the fact before that all the times we've been down there, I'd never seen anybody coon hunt down there at night. They did during the afternoon, but never at night.
Hmm.
So, that never went through my mind either. But so we're talking, it's probably roughly 3 o'clock in the morning. And all at once, the most blood curdling scream I have heard in my life comes out from the woods, coming from downriver. I take it. I'm up out of my chair, spin around where I'm on the passenger side of my car, so it's between me and them. And on this time, for some reason, my jacket, instead of flopping open like it normally does when I'd spin around like that for me to grab my gun, it hung on the butt of my gun.
uh,
So I'm ducked down with just barely my head, basically my eyes above the hood of the car, and I'm getting my jacket undone to get my pistol out. And as I get it out and I start to come up, and I'm looking at these two green things running toward me very fast. And it's like, uh, imagine yourself like you're really super angry at somebody and you got your eyes squinted, you're coming at them, I'm going to beat the fuck out of you, or
yeah.
excuse me. I'm just going to, that's the way this thing's eyes were squinted down. It was coming at me and it was full of rage. And as I got my pistol out and I stand up and the eyes fly open and it makes a turn. I mean, I knew immediately I had been recognized, and it made a turn of probably about 45 miles an hour, for it wasn't coming toward me anymore. It's going through these big tall weeds, and it puts a about 3 foot in diameter oak tree between me and it.
It knows what a gun is. It knows what it can do.
And as soon as the eyes came open, I knew I was recognized. It, knew who I was.
Now, could you see this sucker any better than the last time you got into a gunfight with these guys?
No.
Apparently, he recognized you, judging by the reaction. He was
Yep.
all about trying to get rid of you.
Yep. I I think maybe at first it just thought it had somebody it was going to get, but once I was recognized, it cut off the charge and it was making sure it put something between me and it.
So you really just got the impression that it didn't see you prior to its roar. It just realized there was a human there and it was just going to attack whoever it was, like randomly, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. I think that's what it was. I don't, I know that from talking to the lady at the store and stuff, when I left, I came back the next day and I talked to her, but I knew once I was recognized and it went and it put this tree between me and it. And I'm looking at these glowing eyes that are a foot to a foot and a half above this branch. And at that point, I just put my pistol away because I knew it wasn't going to make any attempt to come toward me. It wanted me out of the area, but it wasn't wanting me out of the area enough to try and challenge me. So I'd put my Beretta back in its holster and I just slowly packed up my fishing poles and everything, put them in the trunk. The whole time it stood there behind this oak tree, looking at me and grumbling like an old man. Like old man that don't like kid in his yard, and them kids come over in the yard to get baseball or something they
Right.
accidentally knocked over there, and it, after he runs them out, he's sitting there on his porch. Them damn kids was basically what I was getting from behind this tree.
Wow. Well, you're really lucky that you had that gun there and he recognized what it was and did a B-turn to get out of there.
Yeah, I think it. I don't think it was really the pistol. I think it was more. It recognized me. I think it was one of the ones that I was shooting at that night when we were dragging the boat back. I was recognized, and it was like, this person killed one of us. We don't want nothing to do with him. We want him out of here, but we're not going to challenge him.
Right. Don't want to end up with another casualty.
Yep. And that's
Wow.
pretty much what I got. And it did. It stayed behind that tree, and it would, put its head out where it could see around the tree. And, I heard the grumbling the whole time. But I casually, I made a point of not being in any hurry to do anything and packed my stuff up and got in my car, started it, and left. And this time I was more curious, I guess you would put it, because the next day I came back during the daytime and I stopped and at the store and I talked with the lady at the store, and they said that since I had shot them ones the time before, but they were getting a little more aggression around town.
Uh-oh.
They hadn't hurt anybody, but they were like, slapping houses and throwing trash cans, this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But she said it was gradual. There was branches that were like 10 feet off the ground. They were snapped like you and I would snap a twig out of our way when we're walking through the woods.
Yeah.
And
Man.
I got over to that big tree, and the bottom of that branch was 11 and a half feet off the ground that it was looking over. And we're talking that branch was roughly a 4 or 5 inch in diameter branch. So that puts this thing in the area somewhere between 13 and 14 feet tall. So the one that we
Ginormous.
ran into that we shot at first was roughly 10 to maybe 10 and a half. This one in 13 to 14 foot range.
Well, it sounds like that's kind of a dangerous place to go fishing.
Yeah, I've been down there since, hunting and stuff before I, got completely disabled here. But I never was down there at night anymore.
Yeah, it just seemed like being down there at all would be pushing your luck at that point, day or night.
The times I was down there during the day, after all this happened, didn't bother me. But I didn't push it at night. On top of the last time I was down there, apparently there's became a lot more people boating on the river there because they had took and redid that parking lot and all put in a concrete boat ramp and parking. And there was now a great big sign up there for the wildlife management area that says that it's only open from sunup to sundown.
Oh, gee, there's a novelty. I've never heard of that before, he said sarcastically.
Yeah. But yeah, a sign up and now that says no guns in the parking lot.
Don't antagonize the Bigfoot.
But yeah, it's definitely changed a lot because now all that what used to be gravel and a gravel boat ramp is now all concrete with a concrete boat ramp. And now apparently they have a ranger that's on that stretch of river during the day full time when boating season opens.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah, because I talked to somebody down there because I kept seeing this, fish and wildlife department truck down there with a boat trailer on the back of it. So, I talked to some of the people there in the town and they're like, yeah, during daytime hours, there's a full-time Forest Service personnel that's on the river in a boat. I'm
Wow.
like, that's definitely unusual. I don't know of any place else they do that.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. That's not common practice on every stretch of river in the U.S. Or
No,
each one has their own ranger to patrol it. No.
no,
Well, man, I got to tell you, like you're a magnet for bad Squatch encounters. I'm definitely starting to get the impression that they don't like you very much.
I
And
don't think so.
I think you might want to try and avoid them at this point as much as possible, especially with less mobility. You're just a lot easier to catch now. So,
Yeah, I'm at home almost all the time now. If I get out in the woods anymore, it's probably going to be with Bear or Kumbo if I can manage to somehow make one of the get-togethers.
yeah.
And I'll be the guy I'll stay here and camp with Bubba Gump.
Yeah.
I'm not going out there unless you're going somewhere where I can stay at the car.
Well, as far as that goes, I was going to fly out there and meet my other researcher friend in Indiana and then ride with him from there down to the meet and greet. He went to it. But just to fly from here to Indiana was like $1,000. And I just went, no, it's not happening. No, 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 no. That's way too much. That's highway robbery or air piracy, whichever you prefer.
Yep. But yeah, I've definitely had some wild encounters and not fun encounters.
Yeah, and it sounds like you've had about the same kind of luck that I have. Yeah, you're really good at getting into really hideous situations, but you have just enough luck to not get killed and get back out of it again.
Yep. Since I've done my cyber squatching, I've actually determined I've probably been around them a lot of times and just didn't know it.
Yeah.
For instance, I was a Boy Scout and there's a Boy Scout camp that's on Lake Monroe in South Central Indiana. And I went there for several summers and we'd spend 2 weeks. And we had problem with our snacks disappearing because for our camp, we always set up our camp. It was halfway between the chow hall and the swimming hole. and they had a snack shack that was open when the mess hall wasn't. And so if you wanted a soda or chips or anything, you could walk up to the snack shack and get a Coke or whatever you wanted to drink, and chips or candy bars or gum. And we had stuck, maybe in our tents. And then when we come back from, say, we'd been out to swimming or whatever, we come back, our snacks are gone. So
Raccoons took them.
yeah, we're thinking that raccoons are getting them. So we come up with a bright idea of, we all had mesh bags that was technically you were supposed to use them for like dinner dishes and stuff, but we started putting our snacks and stuff in those mesh bags and tying them to the little bitty tree limbs that we knew the coons couldn't get on by fishing string
Mm-hmm.
or fish line. And one night I remember in particular, I was usually one of the last ones to go to bed because I've always been a night owl. And I laid down. It was probably 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I hadn't drifted off to sleep yet. And a shadow goes across my tent, and it's a human shaped shadow or a man shaped shadow goes walking past the tent, and I'm like, who the hell's out there?
Mm-hmm.
I blew it up. Somebody must have woke up and they're going to the latrine type deal. And when we all got up to go to the chow hall for breakfast and everything, one of the guy's bags, snack bag was gone.
So either somebody got up to go to the bathroom and swiped a snack bag and got away with it, or there was somebody in camp that wasn't supposed to be in camp.
Yep. And I got to thinking about it, and over the years, there was always little things like that happened there that I'm thinking pretty sure now that was basically there was foots around there, and they were just benign ones. And during my research, I found that ones that was over in the area where the Boy Scout and the Girl Scout camp, which was on the other side of ours, across the I guess you'd call it the inlet. On this side, they're all pretty non-threatening, non-aggressive, not seen a whole lot.
Right.
But now you cross the main lake on the other side, there's big houses and stuff up in there. Now people are running to them over there, and they're more aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you got two different, I guess you would say, troops in roughly the same area. One side's pretty docile, and the other side's more aggressive. It's like they would break windows out of houses, and they'd been seen and scared people and chased people and stuff.
That's aggressive behavior. Yeah, when you're busting windows and chasing people, that's over the line as far as I'm concerned.
And that's kind of what from what I've seen of what I've found online and everything is that's kind of the way it is in most of Indiana. Up north, it's mostly aggressive encounters, and down south, it's kind of split between an area of okay, this area they seem to be kind of passive, and on this side they're kind of aggressive.
Uh-huh.
And like I said, there's been hunters that have literally shot them because they were being charged by them. And there's also hunters that have disappeared with no trace. There's people that's cars had broke down in some areas and they disappeared with no trace.
Never seen again. Yeah, that kind of stuff always creeps me out. We got too much of that kind of stuff that happens over here, and in the Rocky Mountains, people seem to be able to disappear quite easily.
Yep.
But man, I got to thank you for coming on the show, and thanks for coming on and doing the part 2 here. We're running short on time, so I'm going to have to bid you adieu. But I certainly appreciate you coming on the show, Lynn. It was really great to have you on here and talk about all these encounters. And, you don't hear a lot of encounters about people actually having to shoot at these things. And then have the damn thing apparently either jump up and stagger off or get nabbed and hauled off in a second or so. It's just even scarier on top of it.
Yep.
But, really glad that you and your friend, whose name shall be known as Tim, survived the damn thing. And don't take any more crazy chances like that, okay?
No, we ain't kept going out in the woods like that anymore. I've had to go like my own good stuff, but we ain't armored. We're not.